know you're all enjoying your lunch, but we've got a very important presentation. For those of you who I haven't met, which is actually most of you here in the room, my name's Bob Murley, and I'm a member of the great class of 74 here at UCLA Anderson. And it's really a great privilege and honor for me to be serving as chair of the Board of Visitors. We have on behalf of the board, I'm just delighted to welcome all of you who are here this afternoon. We have virtually all of our board members in attendance, many students, and many members of the faculty. And we're just delighted that you could be here to share in what I know is going to be a wonderful presentation. We've had a board meeting the last couple of days, an executive committee meeting last night, and dinner, and a board meeting today. And I can tell you we have a board that's extremely active, engaged, involved, and is absolutely committed to helping UCLA Anderson to achieve its fullest potential. And we're doing our very best to have this place continue to rise and soar. But we've saved the best for last. We have a wonderful presentation for you, a blockbuster panel on the rebirth of television in the landscape of entertainment. And we have 4 of our board members who are just extraordinarily gifted leaders in this field who are going to be participating in our discussion today. And let me introduce them. They include Mike Hopkins of the class of '01, who's currently the Chief Executive Officer of Hulu, which is, I think you know, is an online TV service here in the U.S. and Japan. Ynon Kriez of the class of 1993 is the former CEO of Maker Studios, which is a leader in global short-form video. It's the largest content network on YouTube. Also, Ann Sweeney joins us, who is the former co-chair of Disney Media Networks and former president of the Disney ABC Television Group of Walt Disney. And finally, and last but not least, Susan Wojcicki of the class of 1998 is the CEO of YouTube, which is the world's most popular digital video platform. We have just an extraordinary group here today. Our panel is going to be moderated by Sanjay Sood, who's the professor of marketing and faculty director of the at the Center for Management here in Enterprises, Media, Entertainment, and Sports at UCLA Anderson. So with that, I'd like to invite our panelists to come on up, and also our moderator.
This is a really exciting time to be, or terrifying time to be in television, depending on which side of the fence you're on. So Ann, I'd like to start with you. I know you're not representing Disney, and you're also working with Netflix and not representing them. But in your experience, how do you feel about the challenges that a broadcaster like ABC is facing with we binge, we watch devices on the beach, in the airport, wherever. So what are the trends that are affecting you the most?
Well, actually, as a consumer, you know, I look at this as a fabulous opportunity. For me as a consumer, and in my last position, I saw it as a world of opportunity for broadcast television, primarily because ABC has a very vibrant studio, as do some of the other networks. And it was an opportunity to, you know, really look at the world in a different way. You know, the trend 50 years ago, things would premiere on network television, they would go into syndication during the summer so you could catch up, and then the new series would come on in the fall. And that was all orchestrated by the car companies that were premiering their new models. They really determined that's how advertising would get pumped into the television system. And then as decades rolled by and new things happened, like satellite and cable television channels, that was yet another opportunity to prolong the life or extract more revenue from your programming. But spinning forward to today, it really does feel that it is increasingly a great opportunity for broadcast television, and especially for the studios that own that content. And on the consumer side, I love it because so much of this is flooding into all of the devices that I own, the television, you know, my iPad, my iPhone, and you know, whether or not I'm going to Hulu to see a show or Netflix or YouTube, I have access to a lot of great content all of the time.
Okay, so I'll make this question general for the panel. So Ynon and Ann, you've primarily dealt in ad-supported models. Susan and Mike, you've done both ad-supported and subscription-supported models. What do you think is the future of, is the future going to be an ad-supported model, subscription model, some hybrid in between?
Yeah, well, so I think one way to look at that is to look at the established TV market that there is today. And if you look at it, it's a huge market. It's about over 400 billion, and half of it, a little more than half of it is subscription, and the other half is ads. And so as we move into a new world, I think there's definitely going to be opportunity for both, to have both the ad supported, which is great because then you get really, really broad distribution, and that's good for advertisers. But then I think the subscription also is really valuable because users then choose, oh, I want to pay more for this type of content, and so it has a different type of economics. And so I really think long term there's going to be a place for both.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, and both's been around for a while. Dan was talking about cable and satellite. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that all you would get was free over-the-air TV, and then this subscription model took off, and now
it was a long time ago for some of the people
95, or never for some of the people in the room. 95 million or so homes in the U.S. pay for cable or satellite, and increasingly now you've got, 45 million with Netflix. We've got a bunch. Amazon has a bunch. So, you've got a lot of subscription models out there, and I think they will just evolve and change, and people are right now in this process of reforming their bundle. When you think about what's happening in the market. So I think there's room for both, and we sort of dabble in both. We have a free service, we've got a subscription service that has advertising, and we've got a subscription service that doesn't. So we're trying to also figure out what's the best play.
Okay, how about short form versus long form content? So you've been really driving the short form business. So where do you think things are going to end up in the long run? Are we going to be consuming more and more short form, or we're going to be doing both? What's the future do you see?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in short form, but what's really driving, if you look at everything that's happening around us, is there's a massive shift in consumption habits, in the way people consume content, and really in the way millennials, kids really engage and watch television content specifically, but overall any type of entertainment. And it's kind of staggering. Anyone with kids in the audience knows exactly what I'm talking about. But if you look at the actual numbers, it's almost scary. Like the television, the ratings of television channels in cable went down 20% year on year on average. If you look at the average age of the viewers of free-to-air broadcasting in television this year is 57. In 1990, it was 41. And in 1960, it was like 34. At this rate, by 2025, you'll be 130 years old if you watch broadcast television. So, there's a massive shift. There's so many stats that you can look at. The young audience of kind of call it 22 to 34 is watching prime time on average. 20% of that audience is watching prime time versus 55 plus, which is over 60%. So you really got to think about the audience as you develop economic models and try to target and reach them. With all of that said, I'm still a believer in television content. Television is not dead. In fact, we may be even entering the golden age of television, except you will not watch it on prime time necessarily, or when the head of programming of a certain network is telling you to watch it, as they used to do. And you may not watch it on your big screen. You may watch it on your mobile, on your tablet. And that is what we really have to embrace. And just echoing what Ann was saying, I really believe that the incumbents actually have a great advantage because they already own major programming franchises. They have relationship with the viewer and the consumer, but they need to embrace and work with these new technologies and understand the changes in their audiences. Mm-hmm. But they can win out of this game.
So if we kind of look at the stock prices of all of the conglomerates, again, you're not representing Disney, but some people have estimated that half of Disney's value is in ESPN and the cable and network TV properties. So if the eyeballs are moving away, then how does a Disney or a Viacom or any one of the conglomerates, how should they be reacting? What would you suggest that they do? Well,
I actually don't think they're moving away as much as has been reported. In fact, I think Nielsen issued a correction in the number of people who had cut the cord. I think what drives these great brands, whether it's ESPN or Disney or ABC, really is great content. And people will go to great content. Now, to Mike's point, they won't watch it and Ynon's exactly when the programmer tells you to, but we've been, and the industry has been dealing with the time-shifted model now for over a decade. And it's really just within the last 5 years that we started to see this Live plus C3. People started to recognize that there was monetary value in delayed viewing.
And
also
Live plus
viewing
C3 being people watching within a 3-day period.
Within a 3-day period. But what we know as consumers is that sometimes I watch within a 90-day period. There are things that I just haven't gotten to yet that I will watch. So I think we've underestimated the value of content at this point because we've been too focused on what's happening to the platforms where that content lives.
So if we're at this time where advertising models are getting really good in terms of targeting, and yet the eyeballs are kind of being more challenged to find them. So if we talk about programmatic advertising, what do you see as how do advertisers compete for these eyeballs tomorrow?
Well, I think specifically with taking a page from what Ann was just talking about. We see at Hulu. We have a lot of people watching broadcast and cable shows on Hulu. Our average age is 33. In fact, I was doing a class with you last night. We had a chart and we showed that. But what they're watching is broadcast shows online. So I think it's really the distribution model, this untethering of time and place, and this access for consumers has a lot of ramifications to it. One of which is this advertising issue of how do you then monetize that consumption 6 days, 8 days, a month, 90 days later. Programmatic advertising, I think, is the answer, because whether you're watching last night's episode of Empire or you're watching last year's episode of Empire, you're still who you are. You still have your purchasing power. You still are your demo, and however you're going to reach that customer. And an advertiser can now reach them through these different models. It's far more improved than it was 15 years ago, as Anna was talking about when we started facing DVRs. Right? So when now that you've got this technology that can allow an advertiser and a marketer to reach a customer with a targeted ad, that's so much more favorable for a network and a content owner than a DVR was. So if you were watching, if someone's got an Empire and they're watching it, 3 weeks later on a DVR, it's worthless to the advertiser. But if you're watching that through a Hulu or a YouTube or some other transformative technology, now you can monetize it. And I think that's going to really be something that's really important for the media companies.
And Susan, can you tell us about YouTube's strategy and how you're monetizing the ads?
Yeah. So I think from an ad perspective, I would agree that online provides all these new opportunities to be able to reach users in a more targeted and measurable way than they could have in the past. And that's because we can actually serve different ads to different users based on their demo, male or female, for example. And one of the things that we pioneered on YouTube that I think has been really interesting has been this TrueView format. And so TrueView is a format where the user chooses to watch the ads. And if they don't want to see the ad, they skip. And so you would think that everyone would just skip the ads, right? That's kind of the logical assumption, but they don't. And the reason they don't is because that dynamic encourages advertisers to create much better creatives. And those creatives a lot of times are like content. And actually when we look at at the end of the year, we usually look at our top 10 videos of the year, and there are often several ads that are in the top 10 of all the videos that we had on the platform, and they were ads. And it's because those ads were content and those users chose to see it. And the users engaged in it. There was a story there. And there's been some really great ads, particularly about women, like Dove sketches, really empowering women. And I think that format has caused advertisers to change the way they think about advertising more as content. And then to make it more measurable, to be able to understand, oh no, this creative didn't work, let's not run it anymore. It actually did work. You can actually do that a lot faster, so you can iterate and get rid of the creatives that aren't working and then enhance the ones that are. So
I can
think it's gonna
attest
get
to
better.
that as a marketer. I mean, we spend an awful lot of money marketing now, and we'll change out an ad in 2 hours if it's not working through programmatic advertising. And so you find out what's effective. If it's not working, you switch it out, and you're constantly trying to make that better engagement. You really don't want someone skipping it. You want them to watch it.
And Ynon, at Maker, you've also been pioneering this model where brands will sponsor short-form content. Can you talk about how that business is growing?
Yeah, but I think just to extend the point that we just said, the elephant in the room, in the world, really is technology that is now enabling all these new types of distribution models, product formats, advertising, engagement, measurement, data. All of that really changed the way we approach businesses altogether. And even tying it back to your earlier question about advertising versus subscription, even that will evolve because of technology. So it doesn't no longer necessary to have only a 30-second spot or 15-second spot. It can be a 6-second spot if you watch content on mobile, or it can be brand and entertainment, which you will distribute in different mechanisms other than TV in the old ways. And likewise, subscription, you will be able to create different tiers, different pricing structures, different constructs, different bundles, because it's possible now because of technology. So that is really what's driving that, with mobile being the other elephant in the room, where so much consumption will happen on mobile devices. And YouTube really taught us, and the team at YouTube really did an amazing job creating a whole new industry, because technology enabled that supply and demand to come together in a very efficient way. So we, Maker, being part of YouTube, we used to leverage data in a very meaningful way, where every day we process between 2 to 3 billion rows of data. Between 2 to 3 billion rows of data every day to make informed decisions.
So decisions like when you're going to launch a video? Or
all the way from what shows we should make, or what trends are emerging, or what should we drive because it has potential to be big, even though you don't see it as a programmer necessarily. And the game of scale is also really possible now because of technology. And we always kind of give the example where at Maker, we used to get, we still get, every single day between 10 to 15,000 new creators that want to join the network, which we process through algorithm and technology and bring it down eventually to an editorial decision. But then at the end of that process, you select 100 out of 10 to 15,000 a day because of technology. So now you're able to do things that were not possible in the past. It doesn't change what people like to watch. It doesn't change the nature of the consumer. It doesn't change what is good content versus bad content. You always need to reach the heart of the consumer and engage with them. That didn't change. It's really the way you do that, the efficiency, the scale, the speed, and the commercial interface with the constituents.
And so can you also elaborate on how you've been approaching brands, and what's the response from brands? So you're all pitching brands at various points in time. So they want to put a lot of their money into traditional linear television, but then they're also coming all of your way. How's that conversation changed over the last year or so?
I mean, I think advertisers go where the users are. It's really simple. So if the users are moving to one location, then the advertisers have to move there too. And I think Ynon quoted some of the stats in terms of where is the best place to reach millennials, for example, and we see a lot of them are moving to different online platforms. And so the ability to reach some of those younger generations and be able to get the message across to them is really important for them to be in that platform. And so I think advertising's really changed a lot. If you look at how it used to be much more like you could create a few creatives, you could run those creatives really broadly, you could just get reach in a few places. But media has really fragmented. And you look at something like YouTube, and YouTube overall is really big, but there are like millions of channels within YouTube. And so we've had this fragmentation, and so they need to rely much more on technology to be able to deliver those creatives. And technology has enabled us to change and dynamically adjust those creatives, to use the delivery difference, to change in and out based on the measurement that we've seen. But I think that marketers have seen because they're a reach-focused business where they want to reach as many people as possible effectively, and they've had to readapt and probably become much more data-driven, much more statistical-driven, much better understanding of models like programmatic, which are basically just it's a programmatic way of buying. So rather than doing a fax and a IO, it's basically like a way of purchasing via computer and having it go live quickly.
Yeah, I mean, and so we've approached programmatic in a slightly different way because we haven't gone to the sort of the real-time bidding. I mean, programmatic is a very big word. I mean, it has a lot of different facets to it. And so what we've done essentially is created a private exchange one-to-one with advertisers to take out the IO and the faxing and all of that. But what we're really doing is applying data on top of and segmenting more specifically with the data that you would get through a Blue Kai or through third-party DMP. And so for us, it's really about targeting much more finely than a demo. Are you an auto intender? We'll get a database from Ford and look at what's the match of all the people on their database with ours that have a lease expiring in the next 6 months, and targeting aggressively there. So that's really new. I mean, that's not something you could really do with video. How long have you guys been doing that? I mean, it's only been a few years that we're talking about this ability. I was with our marketing team last week looking at our plan for 2016, and I was thinking back to my time at Fox and remembering those marketing plans. And those plans were a 12-page deck. This was 100 pages of data and target, and you needed more than the hour. And so marketing has gotten much more sophisticated, much more complicated. You actually need to hire different kinds of people now than you used to. And those departments are getting bigger because there's data scientists in your marketing department helping you do this stuff. And so it's pretty fascinating, a big change.
Some people sum it up and they say that marketing is the new finance. Because it's got a lot of quantitative analysis. You have exchanges, right? And then you have people bidding on the exchanges, and you have people creating algorithms to bid effectively on those exchanges, and deploying different techniques. And so, and then analyzing the data afterwards and figuring out what's the best way to optimize and get your best return. So I think there really has been a revolution from an advertising standpoint. But there's also, I think, been a really big revolution from a creation standpoint, which I see at YouTube, which is that new people have been brought in to be able to create content that otherwise were not content creators. And so you have people all over the world, and technology has enabled that anyone to become a content creator. And that's something that's really new. And so you have people that might maybe, before they would have gone and they would have tried, and for whatever reason they couldn't reach that right audience. Maybe it was too narrow a demo, or they didn't really fit into the standard model. And now they can just post it online. They can post it on YouTube, and they can see, do people like it? If they don't like it, they don't watch it. And so I think it's caused a lot of creators who we wouldn't have really anticipated to, in the traditional models, have become successful to be able to create new types of content and actually have really broad reach.
Yeah, and then I think on the other end of that spectrum, when you get into sort of the studio-based, high premium, content, people don't watch crap anymore. Right? I mean, that's really, I've seen a couple of speakers say that phrase in the last couple months, so I stole it from them. But it's true, right?
This Real Housewives has really improved.
Exactly. But the point being is, if you go back to 30 years ago, you watched what was on, and you tried to figure out what's the best thing that's on for me right now. But the key being what's on. Right now, what's on is almost everything. Right? Almost everything is on, and you really get to choose what is the best thing for you. Whether it's I'm binging Boardwalk Empire right now. That's been off the air for a couple of years, I think. Only got 3 episodes left, so nobody tell me what happens. But the point being is that wouldn't have been available to me 5 years ago.
We always used to say that for our audience, the electronic programming guide is social. It's nothing to do with what's on TV. And in that sense, you can't, and the audience is violent. If they don't like it, they're just tune off. You can't force them to watch anything anymore. And there's another phenomena in the advertising space, which is what is termed as influencers. These are people that have massive following in social primarily, whether it's YouTube or Twitter or Snapchat or Instagram, and they can mobilize literally tens of millions of people to follow their preferences and choices and recommendations, which is a whole new marketing and advertising category. But from my experience, it feels that the advertisers are always a little bit one step behind. Not the individuals, but the industry is just lagging one step, sometimes even 2 steps behind where the audience is, just because it's moving so fast. And it's not trivial to move big budgets that's been allocated early, and things have been done in a certain way years ago, and people are kind of just want to stick to what's working, or what has been working, for them to make the transition. What really drove the growth of ad tech as a whole subsector of advertising. And people who go, there are a few markets, events in the year. There's a big one every June in Cannes. It's called Cannes Lions, where the entire advertising industry pretty much congregates. And every time I go there, I'm just amazed by the number of people that go there, and most of them are not the advertisers and are not the people who actually place or exhibit the advertising. These are the people in the middle, the industry that serves, that caters that facilitate those transactions. It's like so huge in and of itself, outside of the advertising industry.
And they all seem to have yacht parties. I couldn't quite figure that out. I didn't know who they were.
I'm not even
walking
getting
down
to
the
that.
dock, and
The
there was like 10 ad tech companies I'd never heard of with yachts, and I was thinking, okay, well, I think there might be a bubble here.
This is not why we go there, right? Make that clear.
It's dull. It's a dull.
That's why you stay. Okay, so Anne, can you tell us, without revealing anything about Netflix, the success in original programming? They're expanding aggressively to the rest of the world. So is Netflix just going to be the big winner in all of this, or how do you see it playing out?
It'd be so easy to just say yes right now. No, I think what Reed Hastings created 15 years ago was pretty phenomenal, and the creation was phenomenal, but also the way the company grew and progressed. And I think, under Ted Sarandos and Cindy Holland, their original programming strategy, I think, is simply brilliant. Work with the best people, give them, the most amount of freedom, and that does 2 things for them. It gives them fantastic content, although not everything is guaranteed to be a hit. And it also makes them not unbeatable, but pretty close to unbeatable when it comes to attracting talent. And I think one of the things I've heard from a lot of creators in the industry is that they want to go to Netflix because of the great creative freedom that they're going to get. And it's not that, it's about a number of episodes. It's really about their ability to create the characters and the actions and the situations that they think, the stories that need to be told.
And so do the rest of you think about the same sort of strategy with original programming, use analytics to decide what kind of content you should put up there, or you don't believe in that analytics story that Ted Sarandos and Reed Hastings have put forth about House of Cards and how it's influenced their creative process? Thoughts on that?
Well, we just launched some of our YouTube originals that we're doing for the first time for our subscription service, which is Red. And really what we have been focused on have been YouTube creators that were on the platform, that have become really successful, that have large followings. And what we see is they're saying, like, well, how do I take it to the next step? I've done, for example, PewDiePie. PewDiePie is a Swedish gamer. I think he has 40 million subscribers plus. It keeps changing, keeps growing.
Part of Maker.
Yeah, part of Maker. Thank you. And he just came out with an original that we're doing with him called Scare PewDiePie, which is it's a different format than what he's done beforehand, where it's more PewDiePie put in these scary situations and how he gets out of it. It's almost like a live game type of performance. And so we didn't go and say, we have millions and millions of creators. We looked at like who has risen up because our community has, in a sense, voted with their watches and voted with their subscription. And then based on that, how do we help them develop even further? And so in a sense, we used analytics too to figure out who on our platform makes sense for us to invest in the future.
This has been a really amazing development on behalf of YouTube to take that step. In my previous life, I was running Endemol, which is the largest television production company in the world, when we used to make 10,000 hours of content a year, for 300 broadcasters. And I can tell you, it's really, really hard to make, to develop shows and know that they will be successful. Sometimes you have to spend millions of dollars just to market a show. And what YouTube created is a mechanism where for 2 cents, or 2 shekels, as we say, can actually launch a show, see if it works or doesn't work, and not take this crazy risk. But conversely, if it does work, or if you have a built-in star with huge following, it's really hard to mess it up. You can back it and invest in it, and you're going to have a hit, whether you like it or not, without taking such a big investment risk up front.
But the other interesting thing is, Maker producing something that appears on YouTube, or the world where ABC Studios produces for Hulu or Netflix. The old rules are gone, and the old progression of programming, just going, one-offs is over.
And so Mike, Hulu's also got an interesting original programming strategy.
Yeah, well, I think we're trying to take a page from everybody, really. I mean, some of it's out of just where we are in life. When we started a couple of years ago, starting to think about original programming, it wasn't as if creators were flocking to Hulu to make TV shows. We hadn't done one yet. So almost out of necessity, we adopted a little bit of what Reed and Ted did, which was to talk to creators about, let's make your show. We're not going to meddle in that. That was almost a requirement, really set up because that's what Netflix was doing. And so we definitely take that approach. And what we've really started to do over the last year or so is, now that we've got a lot more data and time under our belt, we're actually looking at the data to figure out which programming segments should we target with our originals. It's not necessarily going to tell us, go hire Kevin Spacey and David Fincher per se, although it could. But what it really tells us is what genres of content should we go out and try to source. And so that's our strategy, is if we know we have, we look at ourselves as the leaders in adult animation. And so, we think that having an original adult animation would make sense with the right auspices behind it. And same thing with women 18 to 34. We have a very big set of content there, and we want to keep that going. So that's one of the reasons we brought the Mindy Project back. So that's kind of how we look at the data relative to originals. We haven't found anything in our data that would suggest a certain actor or a certain director, but we don't have as much behind us. I think one of the beauties of what Netflix has is, when did they launch the DVD business? It's what, late 90s?
15 years ago.
Is it 15?
Yeah.
It seems like longer than that, but I guess it's amazing. It's only been 15 years, but I know there's a lot of data in there. A long history of what movies were people renting, how often were they returning them. All of that, I think, factors into that data treasure trove they're sitting on.
And can you talk a little bit about international and how that has changed the economics of the TV business?
Well, for the better, certainly, when I was at Disney, and ABC Studios was a great supplier of high quality content to the rest of the world. The dramas, definitely sold incredibly well. You look at the number of countries that Grey's Anatomy or Scandal or now How to Get Away with Murder are in. It was pretty extraordinary. So I think
the whole world is consuming that content.
Well, and you realize that even release patterns have changed, not just in TV, but in film. Because people have access to this content and transporting this content legally and illegally now.
And so do you consider doing original programming for specific territories? Do you think that this is going to be the new model?
That's a cost issue, and I think not every territory can support the cost of the quality. You know, some of the more mature television markets can, but certainly a lot can't.
You know, when you say the international market, that's a contradiction in term, because it's not one market. It's every country is a market in and of itself, and with very different tastes and preferences. So when you cater for international markets, you have to be very sensitive to each of those parameters. What I always found interesting is that there's a lot of creativity, outside of America, and to complement what Anne was saying on the scripted content, where in America you can make very expensive, high-end, a lot of production value in content and then distribute it. On the format side, on the kind of the reality or game shows or the non-scripted television, most of the ideas are actually coming from overseas into the U.S. Literally, almost every big show that you can name in non-scripted television is actually a non-U.S. format. So what's really interesting, and Anne I know did it extremely well when she ran ABC, is to be able to transfer ideas and shows between markets and find core competences for certain categories. So, for example, Endemol is actually a Dutch company. Holland was a pioneer. Because of privatization of broadcast television in Holland, there was a lot of shelf space where people just created content, and what worked traveled very fast internationally because the Dutch are very westernized in their taste. So what they liked represented what's going to work around the world, and that became the model that made Endemol a multi-billion-dollar company. The next in line, by the way, could be Israel, which is where I'm from, where there's a lot of creativity coming out of that market because of, it's a very small marketplace. People have to use a lot of ingenuity and creativity to make great shows. And because Israel is very westernized as well, shows that work in Israel travel and have a high propensity to succeed internationally, at least in the West. So I think that it's really important to be able to work and find a symbiotic relationship between the US and the international markets, and a lot of opportunities are international markets, because there are a lot of opportunities if you are there, if you can actually grab it.
We also think about there just being a global market, which is you just create your content and you release it globally, and you're able to reach people all over the world. So that's I'd say the default way that a YouTube creator releases their content on the platform. They have the ability, if they want, to restrict it to a specific region, but I'd say most creators just release globally. And that has created some really interesting opportunities where, like I mentioned PewDiePie before, who's Swedish, right? But he has actually gotten a global audience. Or Lily Singh, who's from Canada. Or Psy, who was a Korean provider. I mean, there's not a lot of English words in that song. But yeah, it became a global phenomenon with billions of views on YouTube. So I think it's been, I think one of the interesting things that we've seen is that some sets of content will travel and some sets of content is appropriate for a global market. And like if you're a creator and you want to have fame and fortune, global fame is great. They can go all over and do tours and concerts and be able to take advantage of that in other ways.
But none of them want fame and fortune, of course.
Of course they do.
So Susan, these creators that you're working with, or the creators that you have on Maker, do they want to do TV shows? Or they don't care?
I mean, we may have different perspectives on that. I'm sure when they talk to you both, they say they do. But when they talk to us, they say they don't. So, I think, of course, if you're a creator, you're an entertainer, you want to have the fame and the fortune. And so you want to find the best mechanisms to be able to do that, to be fair to them. But I think some of the advantages that they see on YouTube is that they can create the content in their own way, so they don't feel like they have a lot of artistic freedom. They basically have unlimited artistic freedom. They own the channel themselves, and it's global. So that provides an advantage. But I also think certainly lots of other distribution mechanisms have gone after YouTube creators and have done some really great work with them. And so I think, again, they're looking for ways to continue to grow, and they find it in multiple ways.
I think it depends on the creator. Some of them do, some of them don't. But I don't think we've met anyone who wants to give up YouTube, right? I mean, I think that We did a deal with Freddie Wong at Rocket Jump, and he does a show for us, but he releases it on YouTube not long afterwards. And it would be crazy for anybody that works with them to ask them to do that, because that is their popularity. I mean, that's their fan base that all of us are trying to mobilize. And so, but the ones that we've talked to would definitely love to have a TV show to get to do that and their YouTube channel. And depending on who they are, a lot of them are getting deals. I mean, I don't know how many. You probably have a list, but there's a lot of current YouTube stars that have now shows on networks and in different formats.
TV is still a huge medium, and we all talk about digital and social and all of that, but there's so much more money right now in television. So in terms of finding the commercial equilibrium, you almost have to want to go to television because there is money there. I think that maybe two examples, Vice, which is started as a magazine, became a successful online content provider, is now making most of its money on television, and they're launching television channels because there's more money there, and they say it openly out loud. And there's another interesting thing that kind of I noticed, which is everyone knows Snapchat, right? That is growing like crazy, both in every metric you look at, especially with video. Yet what is counterintuitive and interesting is that one of the top product, which is called Discover, which is the kind of curated video offering, is actually, when all is said and done, it's, as of last time I checked, 15 channels, where there's a limited amount of content being uploaded to those channels. These channels, by the way, are all traditional channels, including National Geographic and CNN and ESPN. And there's a limited amount of content being uploaded to those channels every day. And you can't record it, and at the end of the day, it disappears, which is basically television from the 70s. with the only difference is you don't actually have to watch it in the same sequence. You can kind of pick and do it in your own order, but it's very limited number of offering of big, somewhat old brands. They select the content, it's finite, it's small, limited, and it's gone. That's literally back to and this is Snapchat, arguably the most advanced, dynamic, millennial-oriented service out there, online. And 100% of the product is mobile. That's the offering, mobile. Yet they went back in terms of how they cater and curate content, which is interesting.
The other thing that has gone back has also been this sponsored content. So when TV first started out, it started out with sponsored content. There would be a TV show and then a sponsor.
So like the soap operas brought to you by Procter &
Right, by a
Gamble.
soap company. That's why they were soap operas. Yeah. And so I think we've actually seen this model also come back. I mean, Ynon talked about some of the sponsorship models that Maker works in terms of connecting the brands and the creators. But I think it is really interesting the way these models do get recycled in different ways and readapted with new technology and new challenges.
And I was with PewDiePie the day that he was hosted on the Stephen Colbert Show, and he was actually excited. He was excited, and you kind of say like, "What are you excited about?" You put one video on YouTube, you generate 10 times more viewership than you would on television, but yet he was excited. That was kind of interesting to see. It's still a medium that matters, but it will change in the way people will reach it and the way you will monetize content over time. But it's still a key, it's not the end of television by any stretch.
Okay, so we're running out of time. This is my last question, and I'll just leave it open for anybody who wants to respond. We're in the middle of the unbundling of cable, right? So we are seeing skinny cable packages come out. We're seeing HBO go direct. Netflix has always been there. So what is going to be the entertainment bundle of the future? Is it going to be like Netflix, Red, some sort of skinny cable package in Hulu? Is it going to be something different? Or how do you foresee the future entertainment bundle?
I think it's going to be two things. I think it's in part driven by the consumer and exactly what they want. So it could move toward a world where, remember we're talking about the platforms, not the channels, where the platforms will offer you more flexibility, where the platforms, in order to keep you from cutting or shaving the cord, will offer a variety of bundles. to date, we've only had the family tier and the skinny bundle. I think there are probably 20 more repackaging ideas that are on every marketer's desk right now. So I think it's a very fluid time, and I think it's going to be about what you want.
I'd agree with that. I think we're coming out of an era where basically every home in the country, for the most part, had a Porsche in their driveway, right? I mean, you had the best entertainment product at a very high price. So, that's my analogy. It's like you couldn't buy a Ford Escort in cable before. And so I think now that the pricing has gotten to a place where a lot of people are being priced out, or they're saying, look, it's just not worth it for the value I take out of it. It's putting all this pressure on the bundle. And this is coming from somebody who spent 20 years creating that higher price for everybody. But that's happening for sure. And I think the answer is really it's going to be a lot of things. It won't be a homogenous thing, which is what we've basically had for the last 20 years. You're going to have a variety of options for people, like Ann said. And I think the core bundle that exists today, I think will still exist for a long time. It's just there will be other things that people can choose as well. And those that find value in the $80 bundle, which is probably going to be $100 in 5 years, will still buy that. But I think there will be lots of other options for people at lower price points based on their tastes. But I think it's going to be a while to unwind just based on how the marketplace is today and the way the contracts with everybody is done today.
Ynon, or?
I'd echo that. I think it's going to be much more personalized. I think technology will force the market to be very efficient. You're just not going to pay for what you don't like, and you will have different offerings that cater for different audiences, but control will shift to the consumer. With that said, I think all of that is a good thing for content providers. In the end, people consume content. They don't consume technology. They don't consume a package or tiers. They actually consume great content. And that, in my mind, this efficiency will force better content to bubble up and survive, because people still are looking for that. But it's going to be much more accurate and, as I said earlier, almost violent in terms of audience choice and preference. You have to cater for that, otherwise you're going to lose out.
Well, the one programming that we know attracts people is sports. So Susan, will YouTube ever buy rights to the NFL or anything like that?
Well, it's hard to say what will happen in the future, but
can't be that hard.
Well, it is hard. I think the future is always changing. But no, sports are actually very expensive to purchase, and they're the most expensive thing to purchase. So right now, really what we feature are the highlights. So you have the ability to go back and be able to see all the highlights across all types of sports. But the reason it is so expensive is because you have the subscription fees, which are very high. You have a lot of ads, which are also very high. So I think live sports like the Super Bowl are really the pinnacle of a system that we've had for the last 70 years, and you see that maturation. So it's very hard for us as an online player to come in and compete effectively with that right now. But I do think with the bundle question, I think one point I do want to make is that I think there will be bundles going forward. There has been this discussion of like, oh, does it get so disaggregated? Everyone just picks, oh no, I want to have like Discovery, and then I want to have CNN, and that's it, right? Like, are we going to be asking users to pick individual channels? And we have seen all of these different networks launch these separate OTT bundles this year, which I think has been interesting. But there are real advantages in putting things together for users so they don't have to think that much, that they actually just have this content put together in an affordable way. You're getting the best of the content, and then there are economics to have that work, because a subscription is basically like a group buying. You have a bunch of people and they are all bidding, and so as a result you get a better price. And if you're all buying individually, you don't really get that better group buying. And so I think there will be a bundle. The bundle will just be more efficient, and there will be more options, as you've pointed out.
Okay.
Well, I think we've reached the witching hour, so we're going to give you, Susan, the last word. And please join me in thanking our moderator, Sanjay, and also Ann and Ynon and Susan and Mike for an extraordinary panel, and also I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and perspective on this really interesting topic, and also for your engagement involved with UCLA Anderson. We're very grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.